Hi, in this lesson we're going over teaching with Bloom's Taxonomy. Hi, we're RT course experts and we help creative online course teachers with their tech. In this lesson we're going to go over teaching with Bloom's Taxonomy. So what is Bloom's Taxonomy? Well, it's a learning framework created by Benjamin Bloom that uses a hierarchy of learning steps that help students master a topic. And there are 6 tiers from basic to advanced. So as they learn each tier, the next tier builds upon the prior tier. So let's go over a couple of examples. We'll go over all the tiers and maybe we'll use, how about 3D modeling as an example to go over all the different tiers. So somebody wants to learn how to make 3D models, maybe computer graphics, maybe a video game or special effects. So let's go over every tier and what they are, and we'll use 3D modeling as an example. So first of all, they need to remember the knowledge, right? So they need to be able to define, recall basic concepts about a topic. So this is like learning all the words and terms. So in 3D modeling, they would be learning shapes like, hey, this is a sphere and this is a polygon and a cube and all the different essential elements that they would use in 3D modeling to create an object. Next, now that they've learned the basic terms, they need to understand how to use it, describe it, be able to classify or explain those concepts that you've just taught them. So it's really understanding, right? So now they in 3D as an example, they know how to create a cube. Now they need to understand how to they knew what a cube was, but now they actually have to understand all the properties, the width, the height, the position, the angle, the orientation, where is it? So they now are really understanding, whoa, I didn't even realize, the difference between cube and rectangle and, all these sort of, polygons. So now they are understanding, these students. The next step is to actually apply the terms that they know, that they've learned. And, now that they understand what are all the attributes and what really is involved in a 3D object. So step 3 would be to apply that knowledge, to implement or use that new knowledge in a situation. So in our example, our students would be in a 3D program, maybe Maya or Max or something like that, and they're actually creating objects. They're putting them in the space. They're choosing the right tool to create those objects, and they are applying and implementing what they've previously learned. They're creating a shape. They're positioning it, they're setting up all the attributes. They might be creating textures and defining the colors of it. So that's the third stage in teaching 3D using Bloom's Taxonomy. The fourth stage would be to analyze. So at this point, they are reviewing and comparing between the different parts, right? So they're really understanding. They're able to see something and they know how it was made. So they could see potentially a composite object in this 3D example that has a bunch of objects put together. And then they can see how that object was made. Oh yeah, it was, these 2 spheres and these polygon and a cylinder, and they were combined in this special way. And I see how they got combined and this other part got cut off, and they understand all their prior terms, all the different things that they've learned. They understand how they've put it together, and now they're dissecting it. So that's the next stage in Bloom's Taxonomy, is to really be able to analyze. The next stage in Bloom's Taxonomy is to evaluate. That's where a student can judge and maybe argue about the different techniques. In this 3D example, they might be able to say, oh, I could have done it this other way. Instead of combining these 2 objects, I would have taken this first object and stretched it out or reshaped it. That's another way to achieve the result. And it may or may not have, better or worse options. So as a student, they're evaluating they've learned, they know how to analyze, and now they're comparing different techniques, and there's pros and cons for all the different techniques, and your students are starting to learn that. And in the final stage in Bloom's taxonomy, the final tier, is that your students are creating unique and original works. They're able to design, author, assemble. So they're creating, in this 3D example, your students are actually creating a full 3D object using all the prior techniques that they've learned. So that's it. So that's how you would use Bloom's taxonomy. So we would think about that, maybe how we're structuring our curriculum. Maybe this particular course is heavily focused on the first few phases. It's not an expert course, or maybe it's kind of a broad primer on a topic and you're teaching different tiers. So think about, your type of course and how maybe the Bloom's taxonomy can help you structure your sections and then even lessons within each section. So let's use kind of another example here. So again, just to recap, so tier 1, they're learning, they're remembering. So in photography, they would be learning words like what is an aperture, or what is a lens or an ISO, right? The next tier is understanding. So maybe in music, a student would be understanding all the different parts of a drum kit. And then the next tier is applying that knowledge. So in ceramics, that's where your students would be actually making a ceramic flower vase. The next tier is to analyze. So maybe in fashion, that's where a student would analyze every part of a woman's blazer jacket. And they would understand, oh, there's these 6 parts and they get sewn in this way and they get connected, and this is the inner part, the outer part. And then the next tier would be to evaluate. So that's in our 3D example, that's where a student would be able to compare to what appears to be the same objects, 3D things, but they are able to compare, oh, this one has better lighting, this one has smoother edges, and those kinds of things. And the final stage is to create, and that's like in writing, that's a student being able to create and publish their own book. So from end to end, right, everything about it, and even if they have to work with other people to do art or illustrations or editing, but they were able to learn all the steps to go from beginning to end, and they're a pro at that point. So now you're a lot smarter on Bloom's taxonomy, and there's more info and resources in the notes. Please subscribe to get more tips. And for tech help with either a course or a website or a community, visit www.artteachers.com. Talk to you soon. Bye.